Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Brandon, and today I want to talk to you about the methodology that I used for Linux privilege escalation while I was going through the OSCP. Now, I know there are a ton of guides out there online you can find, which will basically just list a bunch of commands to run through for priv-esc, checking different files, things like that. But today, I really want to focus on the methodology and why you should look for certain things. I know that when I was first starting out, when I would just see lists of, hundreds of commands to run, it was super confusing for me and it didn't really make a lot of sense as to why I was doing it. Now, I think that once you understand the methodology and why you should look for things, looking up the commands to do so is going to be trivial and you will be much more successful in your privilege escalation endeavors. Now, what we're looking at here is a mind map or kind of like a flow chart that I made of the thought process that I go through when I first get onto a Linux machine and I'm trying to priv-esc. So, if you are interested, I do have a link in the description. You can take a look at this chart up on GitHub. So you can see, we're looking at Linux priv-esc, and I break it up into three different categories. So the first being credential access, the second being exploits, and the third being misconfigurations. Now, this is just the way that I like to think about it. Those are like the three main categories of things you can find that will help you get to root or maybe get to another user. So that is an important thing to note, right? Priv-esc doesn't always mean going to root. Sometimes you need to go to a different user first. Maybe you get a shell as www data. You need to get to a different user and then get to root, right? It happens all the time, but don't overlook that. Don't get tunnel vision stuck on, I need to get to root. I need to get to root, because that might not be the case and you might just waste some time. But of course, there are going to be a lot of situations where you do just go to root. So, don't get stuck in those rabbit holes and keep your mind open to different things, right? But anyways, let's start with credentialed access, right? So with this category, we're going to be dealing with like finding credentials or using credentials, maybe that we already have. But basically, the first thing that I would start out with is reused passwords. So if you already have some sort of credentials, right? Maybe you have a password that you just got and you were able to SSH in, right? That's your initial foothold. Try reusing that password on other accounts, especially root, because a lot of times you'll find this is the case where maybe it is just as simple as a reused password, and that's how you priv-esc. But I cannot tell you how many times I've overlooked this and wasted hours, and I was kicking myself afterwards. So please, if you find passwords, try them on every account you can find and see if there are reused credentials. The next thing I would look for are credentials in configuration files. A lot of times you'll see this in like maybe some sort of web application source code or things like that as well. So not just the config files, but also the source code of applications. Maybe it interacts with the database and it's a PHP app. I see this all the time, and there'll be some hard-coded credentials in there for a SQL query, right, to gain access to the database. Or maybe you'll find it in the htaccess files for a web server. Or maybe it's some other service and there's just some hard-coded credentials in there. It happens all the time, and it's definitely worth taking a look at. The other thing you can do to look for credentials is check out local databases. So maybe once you got on the box, you see that there's a MySQL database running and it's only on localhost. Well, try to gain access to that database. And once you do, check to see if you can dump any hashes or plain text credentials, and then try those credentials against all different accounts that you know of. And the last place that I would look for credentials is in like bash history files. So a lot of times you're going to see this is disabled on like OSCP boxes, right? And of course, because they don't want you seeing, the commands other people are running and kind of cheating off of that. But it might be the intended path for a box. You never know. Maybe a user ran a command and specified a password in that command when they did it. So when you can check the bash history, you'll find that credential, get access as root, so on and so forth. Now, I wouldn't recommend doing this to kind of like cheat, like trying to piggyback off of other users, but you never know. Maybe it's an intentional method. So I would definitely give that a check. So the next thing, SSH keys, right? Do you have any SSH keys currently? If you do, kind of like a reused password, an SSH key is just another form of credential, just like a password. So try that key again to get in as root or to get in as another user. The next thing, probably the first thing that I check whenever I get onto a box is sudo access, right? Do I have limited sudo access? Do I have full sudo access? And basically sudo is a way to run commands as another user, and you might not be able to run, all commands as root, but maybe you can run one specific command. Now, if you can do that, there's a great site called GTFO bins. I'm sure a lot of you have seen it. If not, I actually do have a full video dedicated to priv-esc with limited sudo access. So go check that out. It's only like 3 minutes long, very straight to the point. But yeah, so check. Do you have sudo access? Can you run things as other users? Now, the next thing is group privileges, right? So what groups are you currently a part of? That can be huge, right? Because maybe There are different files or things you can access as part of that group. But for example, there are some well-known priv methods that rely on you being part of different container groups like Docker or LXD. And just you being in that group alone can be enough to do something with it and get root access just because you're in that group. So pay attention to the groups that you're in. If there are any that don't look like standard as to what you would typically be in as a user on a Linux system, then definitely investigate it further. And while we're on that topic, if you're thinking, well, I don't know what groups I'm typically in as a Linux user, lab it up, right? So if compromise an Ubuntu 1604 machine, and you're like, hey, this group looks a little weird. I don't know if it's a standard thing or not. Spin up a VM of Ubuntu 1604, replicate your target environment and go off of that, right? A lot of this priv stuff is going to be relying on you identifying things that are out of the norm for that situation. That's really what it's going to come down to. If you know what the operating system is supposed to look like by default, you're going to have a much easier time identifying those anomalies, which will lead to privilege escalation. All right, so moving on to the exploit section, you'll notice this is actually the smallest section out of the three, which might be kind of ironic because you might be thinking, well, hacking's all about exploiting stuff, right? Well, yes, but this is really just going to deal with CVEs and things like that, which can really be a small part of it. A lot of times you'll find CVEs might be your initial foothold, but for priv, not really so much. Of course, what I would check for is services running on localhost, right? So maybe there are some services that are running on the machine that you didn't know about externally, but once you get on, you can see that they're running. Find a list of all those services that are running on localhost, or maybe not just localhost. It could be a different adapter or something like that, but just find a list of services that are running once you're on the machine and know more about the machine, and look for CVEs in those versions. If one's running as root or running as a different user, you might be able to, compromise that service with a CVE and prevent that way. The next thing to look for is the kernel version, right? Maybe there's a kernel exploit. So all you need to do is, look up the kernel version that you're running, see if you can pop a shell that way and get root. Now, of course, doing a kernel exploit will always get you root access, and that is great. Now, one side note about this, a lot of people think that, kernel exploits are kind of like cheating in priv-esc. I totally disagree with that. I know that I took the updated version of the PWK labs, and I think they did a great job with patching a lot of that stuff. At least from my perspective, I never felt like I used a kernel exploit and it wasn't the intended method, right? So it's not like you're going to be just dropping these all the time on every box and it's unintentional, right? So just a side note about that. If you find a kernel exploit, I would definitely go ahead and use it because it's a valid thing. Moving on. So binary file versions. Now this can be a tricky one, right? Because you cannot just go through and look up, every version of every binary on the machine. It's going to be impossible. You run out of time doing that. Now, some things to look out for though are like binaries that really stand out, like, and again, that's kind of like a gray area and really subjective, I know. But certain things like sudo, right? Things that are going to be running as root, what sudo version is it? I'm sure you might recall that there was a sudo underflow vulnerability that happened. So is sudo vulnerable to that? Is there a CVE for it? Maybe there's a binary with a really weird name, right? Like say, I don't know, you find like tmux on there and it's named like tmux-1.2.3, where, you can infer that 123 is a version or whatever. I would look further into that. Maybe that's something to look out for if it's like explicitly named with the version, or just anything that looks really out of place from normal with binaries. I would check the version of those because maybe you can use them for priv-esc. All right, so exploits done. Now we're going to move on to the biggest section of all, which is misconfigurations. Now, I think that misconfigurations are what leads to privilege escalation like the vast majority of times. So, of course, this is going to be the biggest section and the thing that you need to check for the most. Now, starting out with cron jobs. So, of course, cron jobs are going to be running on a regular schedule. They're going to be like, scheduled tasks that execute every, set amount of time. Now, there's a few different things you should look for here. So each user could have their own cron tab. And also there will be cron jobs that could be stored in /etc/cron.d. So there's two different places you can look for cron jobs. And when you find these cron jobs, a lot of times they'll be running as root, not necessarily though. But something to look for is, can you write to the cron job? So if there's a file stored in etc/cron.d and it runs as root, well, if you can write to that file and root is going to execute it, you can essentially execute commands as root, right? Because you can make a change to that file, maybe put a reverse shell in there or something, and then when root goes ahead and runs that cron job, you can actually, trigger that reverse shell, get root to spawn it, and there you go. Now, a lot of times it might not be as simple as that. You might see a cron job and you cannot write to it, right? But check all the dependencies of that cron job. So is that cron job calling another file, right? Is it reading from another file? Is it writing to another file? Something like that. Is it reading a file and running what's in that file? I don't know. If it is and you can write to that file, you might be able to execute some code as root or whoever's running the cron job. Does that cron job rely on Python? Is it running a Python script? Well, if it is, can you write to any of the libraries that the Python script calls? Can you write to any of the any of the path directories of Python? Things like that. So don't just look at it as, all right, I can't write to the cron job, I can't do anything with it. Look at all the dependencies, right, and things like that, because it just takes one thing in that chain of execution for you to have write access to, for you to get root on that machine. And another thing is maybe the cron job is calling another file and you don't have write access to that file. Check if you have write access to the directory. If you have write access to a directory, you can rename files. You can't change the content, but you could rename it. So you might be able to add a new file with the same name as your target file, rename your target file to something else, so that when the cron job runs, it actually runs your file instead, right? So, that can be something to look out for as well. Now, moving down to like SUID or SGID files, these are files that, for example, SUID, whenever the file is invoked, it's going to run as whoever owns it. So if root owns the file and a non-root user runs it, it's still going to run as root. Now, there are going to be a ton of these that come by default on your system and actually need this permission, right? So it's not always a misconfiguration, but on certain binaries it is. And again, we're going to rely on GTFO bins to find this. SGID is going to be basically the same concept, except whichever group owns it, it's going to run as. Now, again, I have a whole video dedicated to this, which you can check out. I actually have like a whole priv-esque series where I walk through different, privilege escalation methods actually on the keyboard. They're all very short, and I think the longest one is probably like 7 minutes. And, very straight to the point. So I'll have a card pop up where you can go ahead and check that out now if you'd like. For some hands-on methods. But yeah, so set UID files, check them against GTFO bins. If anything checks out, you're in good luck. You've got root, probably. So moving on to capabilities. So capabilities can be set on binaries. They are pretty much like, permissions. So for example, there's a capability for set UID. So you could have a set UID capability on a binary, and it might not actually show up as a set UID file, but if you're running something like lininum or something like that, it will pick these files up with these capabilities, and you could exploit them the same way you might, exploit set UID if that's a capability, or so on and so forth, right? So moving on to something that I think is really often overlooked and can be like one of the simplest ways, besides reuse credentials, to actually priv-esque, and that is like sensible files being writable. It is so easy to overlook because it's like one of the most basic things, and you would assume that this would never happen, right? So, for example, if you have write access to Etsy password, that's a big problem. Because Etsy password is where all the user information is stored on a Linux system, right? So, if you have write access to Etsy password, you could add a new entry into there. If you don't know the format of the entries, just look up the man pages of it. You'll figure it out very quickly. But you could add yourself a new user, set that user's password to something and set the UID to 0. Now, if a user has a UID of 0, they're going to be a root user. Even though their name isn't root, they are root privileged, right? So you could add a new user with UID 0. There you go. Just because you have write access to Etsy password. So always check that, right? Similar thing with Etsy Shadow. So on a Linux system, Etsy Shadow is typically where you're going to see the password stored. That's not always the case, but if a user hasn't like an X in the password field of Etsy password for their account, their password will probably be hashed and stored in Etsy Shadow. But if you have write access to Etsy Shadow, and that's where the passwords are stored, you can change users' passwords, including root's password. So you might see like root's hash stored in there. Well, just change it to a hash that or a plain text password that and just use SU to su to root and change user and log in as root. It'll be as easy as that. Now, Etsy sudo that's another one to look out for. That's where all the sudo definitions are defined, who can run sudo, what they can run sudo, as, and what commands they can run. So if you have write access to this file, you could just make whatever user you have full sudo permission over the box and run everything as root without a password. There you go. You've rooted it. Just do sudo -i and you have an interactive session as root. Now, lastly, I would look for writable configuration files. Now, this comes into play. It's really, service dependent. There's no one-stop, shop for this, no one answer for it. But if you see a service that's running as root or as another high privileged user, see if you can write to that configuration file. I don't have the answer for every service, but if you do have write access to the service, investigate further, do some Googling, some enumeration, and reading about it, and see if there's any way you can get it to trigger over a shell by being able to add some different service options in there. Okay, so moving on to sensitive files that are readable. So this is going to rely on files that have some sort of sensitive information in them being readable by non-privileged users, right? So an example of this is Etsy Shadow. Again, this is where all the hashes are stored or passwords. So if you have read access to Etsy Shadow as a low privileged user, you could grab root's hashed password and then just crack it offline and then log in as root, right? Same with the SSH keys. So maybe you can grab root's SSH key, which, by default, if it's the default name for a key, would be in /root/.ssh/idrsa. But, if it's a different user, it would just be /home/the username, so on and so forth. You get it. But maybe there's a way for you to read SSH keys. If you can do that, you can grab the private key and then just SSH right in. It's kind of like the front door is being left wide open for you just to come on in, right? So moving on, we have a writable path. Now, the path is an environment variable that specifies where the operating system is going to look for binaries whenever you execute a command, right? So if you type in cat, it's going to look in every directory in your path variable for something named cat and execute that. I'm not going to go into detail of how to exploit it again because I have a whole video dedicated to exploiting this. So you can go ahead and check that out if you're curious. But there are two main things to look for with a writable path. So can you write to the actual environment variable path for the root user, right? So you should be able to write to the path variable for your user that you're running as, but if you can somehow manipulate that variable for root, you could add a directory to the beginning of the path, right? To a directory you control, and then if root is to run that command of whatever binary you've poisoned, then you could, get root to execute some sort of command. So, for example, if path is writable, add /temp to the beginning of the path. And this also relies on root running some commands like in a cron job or something. And, say root is running cat in a cron job. Well, add, /temp to the beginning of your path, add a poison binary cat to /temp, and then root will run it. You get your shell. Again, if you want more detail, I have a video about that. Go ahead and check that out. The next thing is, are there any directories that are in root's path, or again, a high privileged user, that you can write to? So if you can write to that directory, it's the same thing. You can kind of do some path hijacking there as well. Now, the last thing for misconfigurations is if LD preload is set in /etc sudoers. Now, this is a variable that specifies shared libraries. So if you were able to specify a shared library to load, then you could basically add a new shared library that could do something like add a new user or spawn a shell or something like that. So again, that can be some low-hanging fruit to find if you do sudo-l and you see that that is actually set there. So I hope this video was helpful in clearing up some of the methodology for Linux privilege escalation. Again, this is the exact same kind of stuff I was doing when I went through the OSCP. It was really helpful for me. I didn't actually write it all down in this kind of nice format. I just kind of had it up in my mind, but it can really help to have it written down and following a kind of flow chart or mind map like this. Because I'm telling you, when you're going through that exam, you're going to be exhausted. You're going to overlook stuff. So having it written down and having something to reference will help you so much. So again, a link to this will be down below in the description. Of course, it's free. It's up on GitHub. Go ahead and take a look. Use it. If you have anything you want me to add, let me know, and I will definitely take a look. But that's everything I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, remember to like and subscribe for more content, and I will see you next time. Thank you.